Oh, I missed my cue. Hello. This is The Contest, a fantasy footy show where we have video, baby.
Video, baby. Our mugs are up there.
Video, baby. I know. This is wild. And it's the first time that we've recorded live with the new tune. So I was waiting for my cue and I missed it, but that's okay. We're going to keep on rolling. I'm Jesse. I'm with K-Man, and you can actually see him sitting there. What a beautiful man. He's a dual hat winner. We're your hosts. I have nothing to brag about, so I'm just leaving it at the dual hat winner comment. We're your hosts, and we like fantasy footy. You can follow me on Twitter at Contest Fantasy. You can follow K-Man on Twitter at K-Man_TC Fantasy. And if you enjoy the pod, please give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. Mate, how you doing this week?
Yeah, good. I'm going to throw it back to you very quick. How was Noosa?
Noosa was outstanding.
Was it?
We've been going with Jimmy Jams.
Jimmy Jams.
His family. Yeah. So, my wife and I were friends with them in high school. We've been friends with them for a very long time. We've been going to Noosa with them for like 15 years now. So, it was beautiful. I never used to be a beach guy. I hated, I was that
sand.
like gothic kid. Yeah, didn't like the sand. What is not Luke Skywalker, the younger one? Jeez, my Star Wars.
It's everywhere. Yeah, Anakin.
It's everywhere.
One of the great worst lines in movie history.
Do you know it by heart? Can you say it?
No, those prequels. I didn't like any of them.
Hard watch.
So they didn't.
Hard watch. Hey,
they don't exist in my world.
That's fair. That's fair. Neither do the most recent sequels for me either.
Fair.
But I'm not a real fan, I guess. So anyway, news was awesome. Thank you for asking. I love the beach now. Oh, and my wife got me a Nashi for Christmas. You know the Nashi?
What is a Nashi?
It's like a button up, but like for the ocean.
Oh yes, like the beach pajamas.
So it doesn't the beach. Yeah, so exactly. So it doesn't cling to all your rolls as you're in the water. Felt very good. How about you, mate? How was your weekend?
It's busy. It's busy in the Cayman household. We decided we'd get a 7-week-old puppy. I completely underestimated. This is now a newborn again in our household. The late nights, the toilet habits. I'm on no sleep. But
no sleep.
But
morning guy is mad at night guy.
You know what? Yeah, the worlds have collided. Night guy, but morning guy needs to kick in for work. They're not happy with each other. But I did get to see a new show, so smashed it out while this dog was running amok, and that's called His and Hers. Oh yeah.
Oh, dude, we're watching it.
What do you reckon?
Love
do you like it?
Oh, look, I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm a massive John Bernthal fan, so I was really, really keen. I think we've got 2 episodes to go.
Yeah, okay.
So no spoilers, please.
All right.
I forgot to watch Chair Company. I'm sorry. I completely forgot. I was going to watch it, and then I forgot because we discovered another show, Last One Laughing. Have you seen Last One Laughing?
Last One Laughing. No.
Hosted by Jimmy Carr. It's just all these famous British comedians in a room together for 6 hours.
Okay.
And they're not allowed to laugh while having to make each other laugh. And it's hilarious. It's brilliant. So I'm going to get around to Chair Company, but they all break slowly. So it's like, there's like 6 episodes, the 6 hours is cut up into an episode each. It's great. Richard Ayoade, Bob Mortimer, Lou Sanders, all these great British comedians. So it was a good time. But I am going to watch Chair Company. I'm very excited.
Get ready.
We have a bonus show coming this week.
Yes, I'm pumped for that one. And I was on it.
I'm glad. You were on it. That's right. If you were on it and you know about it and you're excited, think about the people who have no idea it exists. Draft Night Strategies. It's a little mini for you, 25 minutes long, I think, and we just take you through all those top draft strategies. So listen in. I think that one drops on Wednesday. And that's kind of all the surprises we have this week. Video and a bonus show.
Yeah.
So I think we're doing well. Great show lined up today. We're talking injuries. We're talking training notes. We're talking rookies. We're talking all the biggest news because it's all happening this week. Fantasy footy feels like it's finally heating up. And of course, we're talking the big forward line questions, because what the heck are we doing with our forward line? This is a monster, mammoth monster. This is a monster run sheet that you've got going here. This could be multiple episodes.
Dude, it didn't start this way. So to preface this, our pre-production meeting, hey, maybe we should just quickly go over the injuries for the week. And this list through the week has quadrupled in size. We could just do an episode on injuries. Yeah. But just to back up, last week, I mean, we talked about what we want to see in preseason, and a key part is looking at those injuries, the training notes, and we've just got some big names, key personnel that I think we need to be wary of and track where they might be coming back, how much fitness are they going to lose. So I'm excited, my man, because we go around the grounds. Do we have that sound button?
We are bringing it back. Well, I don't know. You're in control here today. I don't think we have
a sound button.
I think I heard it twice when I was in London, and I haven't heard it since. But I liked it.
Some fun
I'm all for it. I think we should bring it back. Do you want to kick us off with these injuries? Should we rattle off just the list of the sheer volume of guys who have gone down, and then maybe talk a little bit more about the ones that maybe are a bit more fantasy relevant?
100%. And great work from the DT team to come out with that mid-January injury report. Just gold dust in terms of getting our starting sides ready. And Jeremy Howe came out this week being one of these injured players and talking about the pressure and intensity of AFL footy, not only AFL footy, but the preseason, and perhaps contributing to some of these injuries. But I guess one of the earlier ones from this week was Will Day. Value option at midfield, just coming back from long-term injury, and that didn't look great, did it? Dislocated shoulder, and I'm sure Hawthorn now are in damage control about what that midfield contingency is going to be for at least opening round in the first couple of rounds, but not a great start.
No, not a great start. He probably wasn't on my short list, but I imagine he was on the short list of a lot of coaches. So that's a really huge one. We've got some other guys like Jesse Motlop has really sadly gone down with an ACL, as has Jackson Archer, the rookie at North Melbourne. So that's really, really sad. Two names that probably aren't super fantasy relevant, but never good to hear about those big preseason injuries. Big Mac's gone.
Is it Index?
Finger just weeks out. Index? I don't know. I think so.
Apparently, he's still going to be right for Origin. I think he's going to come back, but
well, he'll come back with three fingers. And he'll have the claw going on one hand. Dan McStay again. He's been the hard luck case since he left us at Brisbane, hasn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say Collingwood. That's a few now. You got Dan Houston coming back from shoulder. Myercheck's left. Bobby Hill with a leave of absence. Now with Dan McStay, that's a few holes they're going to have to fill, and how they're going to structure that up. Whether that affects a Jordan De Goey, who I planned to at least have a really keen eye on in preseason, but what that's going to do for his forward time and split, and how they're going to accommodate that is going to be an interesting space. But yeah, I feel for Dan McStay.
Need a royal commission into the ground at Collingwood, I reckon. See what's going on there. Clayton Oliver, not a huge flag here. He's out for 2 weeks, but we didn't want to see an interrupted preseason, did we?
No. Really. New club. We want him back. We've talked about it. I'd love to see him to where he was 2 or 3 seasons ago, and especially knowing that Josh Kelly is still months away from running. There's space for him to get into that midfield. So, look, 2 weeks away from match fitness. He'll still probably get in some capacity to maintain what he's done in preseason. But for those coaches looking for a value option, not great news heading into starting side. But the big news today, mate, Adelaide. Dan Curtin, Dan
Curtin.
Where they were cuddling each other. The coaches got WrestleMania happening. And then we have a dislocated knee. Do we have to think about what we're doing in preseason?
Well, perhaps. I just think if we could, I know it's a contact sport, but if we could just play touch, maybe AFL 9s for all the practice sessions leading up to the big round one, that'd be great.
Did you see the footage? Was that Jordan Dawson he was wrestling with?
Oh, I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I watched it once and then I wanted to look away, so made me too sad.
So
it's
that's
not
a big
ideal,
problem. That's certainly a value option that a lot of coaches were looking at preseason. There seemed to be midfield time and a need for another player in that midfield. Big body and just someone who could have started in our lineups in the midfield. But 6 to 8 weeks, we're probably going to have to do a line through that one.
I think so. It's too much of an interrupted preseason. Even if he's back earlier and he's there for round 0 or for round 1, sorry. I still kind of think that's too much of an interruption to the preseason. I'm kind of getting flashbacks to Mateus Philippou last year, that kind of thing. For these mid prices, that's not what we're after. Sam Walsh did. I think he just copped a corky from what I saw in the injury reports. So he came back, I think, after that. So he should be okay. But obviously, we don't want to see Sam Walsh go down. He's firming for me as a pick that I'd like to make. Harms and Bobby Hill, leave of absence. Probably not super fantasy relevant, but it will be interesting to see the knock-on effect that someone like Bobby Hill particularly has on that Collingwood structure. I guess, again, going back to, your boy and Jordan De Goey.
Yep.
Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Absolutely. Just said it earlier. So that's a couple. There's 3 absences there where they've lost experience, and you'd think he would be an easy fit, Jordan, to go with a bit more forward time and managing that split as opposed to having to fill a hole in midfield. So, yeah, that's a worry. I did have an eye on Jordan De Goey.
Not feeling great about Collingwood this year. And I don't even mean in fantasy. I kind of just mean in real football. I wonder if maybe, Craig McRae's been playing a little bit too close to the sun for a few years now with how they've gone about their draft picks and their list management, and maybe we're starting to see that decline. So it'll be interesting to see what 2026 holds for Collingwood.
Next one.
You've got here the TDK. Yeah, fill me in.
Yeah, just read it today. So he's not a certain starter to play an opening round. The impact it's going to have on Rowan Marshall, we don't know what the split is going to be. We've forecast that Marshall could be a bit more forward. Target, we know he's a transitional player, as you talked about with Vams, and the potential upside with a Marshall in that capacity. But to not have TDK there is not a great insight into what the season looks like, I think. So I think it's just going to cast a few more question marks rather than being a starting pick.
Absolutely. And we've got a list of guys who just aren't training with the main groups. Names like Luke Ryan, Riley Sanders, Ed Richards, Jack Viney, Jack Payne at Brisbane, and Dan Houston coming back from surgery there for his shoulder. He played in the B team in the match sim. Dan Houston is a name that I've had my eye on, probably more for draft than for classic, but I do think there's some value there. It's just a bit of a shame that maybe there's already an impact being had on his preseason from that surgery, but we'll wait and see what he produces closer to the season.
Yep. And so that was just the injuries. But we're starting to get these squads back after Christmas. We're getting some intel, and a big shout out and big ups to those people on X who are continually supplying us with this information. But we do need to take, with that old cliche, a grain of salt. I mean, there's a number of players who aren't playing with the main group, i.e. pretty much half of Melbourne. So having a look at some of this information and just validating your research and your backing. But I think we should go through some of the key bits of information that could at least help us with starting sides. And do you want to start, mate, with Freo Dockers? Plenty of intel with Freo at the moment.
Yeah, kicking it off with the Dockers, multiple sources as well. Lockie Byrne on Twitter gave some good notes. Murphy Reid is playing exclusively on ball, which I think is really, really interesting. It's something that I definitely want to keep my eye on. He killed it last season. He looked absolutely outstanding. And so to see that maybe he could have an impact in the midfield, I wouldn't expect, with Young, Sarong, Brayshaw, I wouldn't expect Murphy Reid to have an exclusively on-ball role throughout the season, but it would be interesting to see if he could roll through there. Could he be the 4th or 5th guy up, get some rotation? That'd be really interesting. Hayden Young, quote, looks back to his best. He's playing on ball and off the halfback flank as well. So that's what we want to see. is there enough value in Hayden Young there to kind of be seriously looking at him? I haven't really been looking at him closely or considering him closely for my team, but he was a name that ended up on a long list of mine at the end of last year.
Yeah, one eye. I think it's more the game style of Freo that we're not really impressed with.
Agreed.
That change of possession football to high transition football doesn't accumulate to high midfield points. So to share that then with Sarong, Brayshaw, Young, and the next fella, which I think this is really interesting. I don't know how much we can read into that, but Luke Jackson playing purely on ball and forward and not co-rucking. Because we have this emergence of Mason Cox. So, what are your thoughts,
I was going to leave that one till last. I was going to
ruined it.
To it. I was going to skip. I was going to be fantastic, but look, I'm sure everyone's heard of it already. Yeah, we've got we've got an earlier. I think from Nerds for Life, Supercoach on Twitter, we've got an earlier training day note that Darcy and L-Jax battled it out in the ruck. But then most recently we're seeing, Luke Jackson forward and on ball and not at all in the ruck with, as you say, Mason Cox emerging as the number 2 guy. Look, I think you're right. It's hard to know how much to read into this, but I suspect, given how well Luke Jackson did in the ruck last year, and how well that setup actually ended up working for Freo, I think you'd be hard-pressed to make a strong case that based on one training note that he wasn't going to be at least involved in the ruck. So we'll have to keep watching and see what happens. He's a big boy to just play on ball.
I was going to say, you know what I do like about this? And I'm thinking outside the square here. The early ball ups. So not waiting for your Sean Darcy to roll on down the field. If Jackson's in the midfield and he's following ball, what a cracking ruckman to just go as an early up. It's almost
absolutely.
Like they're playing 3 rucks.
And you know what? The 2 rucks has not worked for some teams, but the 3
rucks.
Not everyone's tried that. That could be the next meta in AFL football. Look, that'll be an interesting watch. Not sure what we'll see out of that. Jaiam is playing on the wing, floating forward. Nothing really to see there, I think, for fantasy. We've got Shea Bolton getting some run through the middle in match sim. Again, I think you had, what have I written it down here? I don't think I wrote it down, but I think we had like Brayshaw and a couple other guys on ball on Team A, and we had Sarong and Young and on Team B. So they've split up their main 3 guys across both teams. I was not hot on Bolton last year. I didn't see the need for him in Fremantle's midfield. I felt like, when Bolton was recruited for Freo, I saw him as a recruit for the forward line. He needed to be that impact forward that he has been for Richmond. And so I still feel that way. I still don't see Shea Bolton being a guy that could, elevate to a top 10 or a top 6 forward this season. And I don't see a ton of value in him either, but nonetheless, that could change. It'd be interesting to keep an eye on. Erasmus and Johnson getting some run through the middle. So maybe Erasmus, is it finally his time? Can he finally live up to the name? Who knows? Something to keep an eye on, I suppose. I think this is the interesting note for me. 10 different guys rotating through CBAs. So it's just an absolute schmozzle through that midfield at the moment. And I think it's just going to be those 3 dudes. It's going to be Young, it's going to be Brayshaw, it's going to be Sarong. We're going to have Luke Jackson doing whatever Luke Jackson's doing, and Sean Darcy making some appearances as well. So, I think that mix is going to be relatively unchanged, with maybe the benefit of someone like a Murphy Reed and maybe an Erasmus rotating through occasionally. Who knows? I think that's the mains. Those were the main points, I think, to take out of. Although, do you want to hear the quote about your man Sean Darcy?
That I found it's the fittest he's ever been, right?
So this is
best shape of his life.
I love best shape of his life. Taser, love you, mate. I think we've talked once. It was great. Love to have you on the show. Taser said in a comment, without exaggerating, this is the fittest. The fittest and the most free moving I've ever seen him. No strapping it at every contest. Fittest he's ever been. Absolute no red flags there for your man Sean Darcy.
He's back. Back,
baby.
When you have past season bias over a player with value, and you hear comments like that, gets you going, my man. Does get you
Love
going.
It. Can I toss over to you to take us through some Melbourne?
Melbourne Demons. Looks, there's some interesting intel here, but what I will say, there's a lot of personnel who are sitting out main sessions. So I think a lot of gap fillers at the moment and potential looking to the future. But I guess the two biggest ones were Steele, absolutely killing it back in full-time mid. He is beast mode. He's exactly what we want old Jack Steele to be, as long as that knee holds up. And working really well with Cozzy Pickett. So adding a bit what do you think about Cozzy Pickett? Do you think he's going to have, with the experience that is left, it now gives him the opportunity to have more time in the midfield? Do you think his body can withstand the rigors of playing footy in that midfield week in, week out?
I think his body can. I don't think it's a matter of his ability to hold up. I'm just not convinced that we haven't already seen Cozzy's ceiling with midfield time. I was interested to see and hear other people's thoughts on him this preseason, but he was never a guy that I was seriously looking at for Classic. I think I've got him ranked. Look, I've got him ranked really aggressively at the moment for redraft at F6, but that's just kind of assuming that he's like a mainstay in the midfield. And even then, the other reason is that this forward, this forward line this year is just cooked. So like it could be him, it could be Manor, it could be Treloar, it could be Darcy, it could be Moore, it could be Tilthorpe. We'll talk more about all these guys later. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I just think maybe he might, he did 87 last year and I could see him doing that again. And I'm not sure that there's much more to be had in there.
Two youngsters with potential upside. Caleb Windsor looking really, really good in that midfield. Again, without a Viney and some other players as well. And Jai Cully, very cheap. A second or third year player, touted as going to be a really good player in the AFL system. In beast mode, I read, on the wing and inside mid. Again, with no Viney, perhaps more of a wing, but at least coming up to stoppage. Just two players that I think we can keep an eye on. Christian Salem, in his regular role, if we see a spike in kick-ins due to the Bowie omission, due to injury, that presents a value option in the back line if we're starved of those. But again, with Melbourne, I think it's looking at the next month of track work and starting to see those personnel come back, and then seeing more consistent intel about what Windsor's doing, Jai Cully. But just an interesting space.
And of course, the names that I'm really interested in, Langford, Lindsay, these guys as well.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how this midfield rotation fills out. And I think it was Rowan from the Fantasy Marketplace, who I'm really, really liking his work. Did an awesome episode on the pod.
That was brilliant.
With Holmesy.
Yeah,
that was fantastic about market share. I've started to dig into those stats myself, and I'm really interested in looking at how that can maybe shape some picks for me. But he's talking about guys like Trent Rivers as well. And, Trent Rivers' market share is fairly reasonable. And so I think Melbourne they're actually one of the most interesting teams to watch over the preseason. Yep. Whether that results in fantasy output, who knows? But I think they're going to be really, really fascinating to look out for as we roll through the preseason towards round 0. All right, the Adelaide Crows. So, again, shout out to Nerds for Life Supercoach on Twitter, who provides some of the best training notes out there. Josh Rochelle getting lots of midfield time during Match Sim. This is a really, really interesting one. It's interesting because it's just so kind of out of left field. That's why it's interesting to me. Not sure if we can read anything into that. My suspicion is that Rochelle will return to his forward role eventually, and Rankin will go through the midfield, especially seeing as Saligo was noted as playing at half forward. And again, we saw some real promise out of Saligo last year. His role is in the midfield. I don't see a half forward role for him sustaining as we get closer to the season. Do you agree? Any thoughts on those? Just seems weird, doesn't it? Some of those choices.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the bigger body of Rochelle, and they've been looking to be a bit more dynamic in that midfield. But with Rankin out through to suspension, I could just see Rochelle as a need to go back up to that forward line. I agree with you. I think he's more of a forward, and they're probably just playing around with some structures. Saligo's an interesting one because halfway through last season, he was talk of a potential underpriced premium with the role that he was playing. So I've actually got an eye on him to maybe be slightly unders this year.
Yeah,
So I'm
with you.
not buying into that too much. The injury to Curtin is going to be the big talking point and what that does in the next month.
Especially seeing as in these particular training notes, Dan Curtin was noted as being dominant, looking huge. He's packed on some muscle. He's looking great. He was moving well. And then obviously he's gone down to injury. And so that, makes that even more sad. I wonder if Dan Curtin could be a guy that we potentially look at around, round 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. I guess it's going to depend on how set Adelaide's midfield mix becomes in the first 5 rounds. But definitely someone to keep our eye on, after the season has started. Sid Draper and Ben Keys running laps in the rehab group. So again, I think there are a few players in Adelaide that are fantasy relevant this year and that people are interested in. So that is Dan Curtin. That is Sid Draper. Sid Draper has certainly been sitting there in my forward line, but we talked on our last pod together, don't love the fact that he's been sitting out. And obviously Ben Keys, looking at the potential flow-on effect of his absence on the team as well. But that was kind of all there was really to come out of Adelaide that I thought was particularly interesting.
Yeah, sad news for Dan Curtin. I'm certainly going to have to make some changes to my midfield. West Coast. Now, West Coast, again, an interesting team. I've always been worried about their fantasy output last year. And I'm sure as we're talking about market share, their points, AFL points last year would have been down the bottom. But just of note, McCarthy getting pretty much predominant mid-time. You've touted him as being a potential value pick, and he had a cracking second half of last year coming in as a mid-season draft and what he did to change with his run and carry at half-back. So to get more mid-time, do you think that enables more fantasy scoring, or do you think now with the congestion it actually takes away his ability to rack up possessions?
Look, I'm just going to be honest and say I don't know.
Yeah.
This is one that I just want to keep watching over the preseason. I think, I know there have been some pods that have been pretty anti-McCarthy, not because of him per se, but because, mid-season recruit, maybe he's maxed out in terms of what he's able to put out. You add on top of that the concerns about West Coast. They're not a high-octane team. Their fantasy scoring capacity is pretty capped as well. And then, we saw him in a particular role and he was really good. So you've got the unknown on top of that. I have a gut feeling about McCarthy that he can be really, really good. I wish he was about $100K cheaper than he is.
Yeah,
I think sitting
awkward.
in that $800,000 bracket, it's really awkward. If he was around like 680 to 730 or something like that, I'd feel much, much better about it. But he's still a massive watch for me. I read the same things that you did, that McCarthy, was, I was about to say burning the house down, but that's not the right term. Running the house down? I can't remember the phrase. Anyway, you know what I mean. But he's a watch for me. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens and what that midfield mix ends up being.
And Dersma, the new recruit, was really impressive, kicking a goal from outside 50, and I'm sure he's potentially going to look good in a younger side that is West Coast. How he can stand up against mature age bodies will be very interesting as a first-year player. This was the interesting space for me. So there was certainly a midfield battle between two groups, and it did highlight that in the B team, the structure was Dev, Rob, McRae, and Schoenberg. So perhaps fighting it out for either a last position. But in terms of our forward line, which we're going to get into, an important cog of that structure is having these rookies of Dev, Rob, and McRae at the moment. So they were mixed later in the session. They did change up the midfield group, but that was a little flag for mine, and I'm hoping that intel changes and progresses in the next month. I'll probably save the rest of that discussion point for when we talk about the forwards. But Jacob Newton a standout mature age rookie from the 2025 mid-season draft, was best on in the most recent match sim. So let's look for some consistency. Let's see if that is real, but maybe just something to keep an eye on, because I think we're going to be starved of rookies this year.
Just a quick question about Dev Rob. Not too long ago, we were talking about how at West Coast, he's a walk-up best 23 player. But, his position is midfield. That's what he plays. That's what he can play. He's not a half forward. His kicking ability is not good enough to be a half back or a half forward player. He's got to play midfield, and he's a defensive mid. Is he a year too late in arriving to West Coast? Not definitely, but is there a possibility that he's a year too late with the addition of, say, Dersma after the draft? Because Dersma is playing. Reed is their number one midfielder, I would say, at this point. They brought in Jack Graham last year, who offers a bit of a defensive mind to that midfield, who offers a bit of experience. I just wonder if Dev Rob had come through last year, I think he would have really had a walk-up role. But are we now seeing that actually he may not quite be a best 23 player in this current mix? It's just, I don't know, a flag.
It is a really, really good point, because they wanted him 2 years ago. They put the feelers out. They met with him. They said, you were a WA captain. Come home and start this new squad with us. And you're right. Because he didn't, they brought in. They had to have the experience that brings this young core together. So your Graham and Baker took that opportunity. Dev Rob didn't, decided to stay at the Lions. And you're right. Suddenly, has he missed that opportunity to have at least a season under his belt to get used to a new system, to add value to that system, to add leadership to that system? And then suddenly we have an influx of all these young players, and the experience is already there.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting watch, and I feel for him. Love Dev Rob. He was a cult favorite at the Lions, so I really hope for his sake that he pops off. I'm going to take us through the Blues. So these notes are cobbled together from a mixture of Nerds for Life from an earlier training session, but also Blue Abroad on YouTube as well. So I guess a few notes looking at there's a number of guys who are all looking lean, and they've packed on a bit of muscle. Best shape of their life, fittest they've ever been. And we've got, those names include Jagger Smith, Campbell Chesser, Elijah Hollins, who I have a little bit more to say about later, and Adam Scherer as well. Just a bunch of guys who, some of these guys are either coming off a big injury. Some of these guys might be considered in fantasy, quote unquote, injury prone. All these guys are coming in looking like they're really starting with something to prove. So that's interesting there. Future shout out, not relevant for this year, but Cody Walker, who we all know is going to be an all-star recruit for Carlton in 2027, was training with the team. So that's really cool that we've got this youngster who is already getting reps with the ones.
Yep.
I think that's going to be a really exciting time for us in fantasy in 2027, especially in keeper leagues and things like that. Nick Newman, the name that everyone wants to know about in Carlton. He didn't spend a ton of time with the main group. Blue Abroad was saying that he's not really worrying about that yet because it's only the first session back. Nick Newman, they're not going to want to take any risks with. They want to ease this guy back into training. There's nothing to suggest that he hasn't got that halfback role that we want him to yet. So at this point, it's just a watch. Harry Mackay left training early. I actually don't think that Harry Mackay is a totally fantasy irrelevant player. We've seen what he can do when there's no Charlie Curnow, and now there's permanently no Charlie Curnow. Would you ever pick, is there ever a world where you pick Harry Mackay in your team?
Oh, Struth. Certainly not to start a season, but if we're talking after the buys and we have those string of games where we can see potential bags of 8, like a la Jeremy Cameron we've seen in the past against West Coast. That would be my only entry of Harry Mackay into sack lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But he's one to watch. And, on the flip side, Charlie Curnow is also one to watch at Sydney to see what he does with Harry Mackay. So I think
best shape
both
of his
these
life,
boys,
apparently.
Best shape of his life, fittest he's ever been. Absolutely. We got Liam Reedy filling TDK's role, essentially. Pitto playing R1. Reedy's been spending time up forward, rotating through the ruck. At the very least, this is what we want to see. He's a green dot at this stage for us. So still kind of, I think, locked in that R3 spot until, we hear something is amiss. And Sam Walsh, again, fittest he's looked in years, quote unquote.
Until he finished training early.
With a corky. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
We hope it's a corky. So, look, a lot of fittest they've ever looked going on there. But, I don't know. Some interesting training notes. And the Blues are another really interesting team that I'm keen to watch over the preseason.
And maybe it was on the cards. I don't know about you, but last year they just seemed like they couldn't get to the finish line. And maybe it is match fitness. Maybe there's an undercurrent of base level fitness that they're not having coming back from preseason. If you're going to be top 8 side, you've got to finish seasons out. We talk about Geelong having that capacity to manage their players, and they do that under hardened footballers who have that fitness capability and that capacity. So certainly maybe something that was on the drawing board, on the whiteboard to start preseason.
Absolutely. Take us through the last one, mate. North.
Yeah, I'll rip through this one. North Melbourne, we just had some inconsistent information about Kirch. So he was playing half back for one session. He's been playing in the midfield for another session. And I think they're going to trial that. We did talk in earlier pods, and I'll say it again. I think for North Melbourne to be a successful club, you need McKercher entering into attacking 50 and using the skills and abilities that he's got. So I know as fantasy coaches, we probably want him in that halfback and consistently in halfback, but it's something to keep an eye on. Are you concerned about Kirch as a value pick in your starting lineup if he's playing predominantly midfield?
Yes and no. I think he's a good enough player that he could establish himself as a decent mid, but there's just so much cheap ball to be had off of halfback that really that's what we want in a mid-priced option. So I'd rather he play there, that's for sure.
Plenty of injuries at North, especially with their back six. So we don't have really the intel on what that will look like in terms of their structure. Kick-ins. Zane Dersma impressed in a wing position on their last session. But it's this that I'm really interested in. This looks like an exciting battle. They had a midfield battle, Shees, Simpkin, Parker versus Wardlaw, LDU, with Powell as well. I would have loved to have watched that. I would love to have watched that match sim. And again, Wardlaw's come out uninterrupted. I didn't want to say this, Jesse. I didn't want to come out and say Wardlaw has had an uninterrupted preseason because it's going to put the mozzer on him. But apparently...
I thought you were going to say best shape of his life.
Well, best shape of his life. And that midfield actually excites me a little. If they're firing on all cylinders.
It was an exciting midfield last year. North's problem aren't their midfield. It's all the areas around it, and it's their ability to move the ball consistently through that midfield. Like they just keep taking mids. They don't want any other team to have a good midfielder out of any draft. They want them all for themselves, and I think if Clarko had his way, every line would just be midfielders. You know what I mean? So, yeah, look, I think that is a cool midfield battle. I really hope Powell can make an impact this year. We've seen glimpses of what he can do. And obviously last year he came out firing, but he's just so up and down. He's clearly not the guy that... Yeah, or Clarko doesn't. I don't know what's going on, but
information today was Powell was back to half forward. He plays that half forward role, gets lost in transition, and Simpkin was on the wing today. So I've still got a huge eye on LDU. I think there's potentially 10 to 15 points upside. We've been waiting for 3 years, but could be this year.
Should we talk about the forward line?
Look, forward line is... What was it, last year's ruck line? What do we do? I don't have the answers. Look, we're going to talk about this, and when we're going to probably forecast it more than having assurances, confidence. but I think this is going to be you and me, two footy nerds, talking about the forward space and what our options are, what's available, what is value. And again, I don't think we're going to walk away from this pod with answers for everyone out there, but maybe some things that will just aid their decision making moving forward. And I just want to start with what do we think the best six forwards are with the names and the current crop? And forgetting DPP, I know that could change things later in the season depending on forward splits. But what do we see that top six forwards in regard to a best 22?
So forgetting DPP is in can't name anyone who's currently not got forward status?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right. So your Chad Warner's out of there then. Look, number one is Sheasel, obviously. I personally think that Sam Flanders can be the second best scoring forward. I know you disagree, but I've had him ranked as my F2 from day dot. And that's simply because it's so early in the preseason that I think the most reasonable projection currently for Sam Flanders is that he will have a full-time midfield role. Now, that could change, obviously. And if that changes, then my projection for that will change. But we've seen what he can do with midfield time. We've seen what he can do, especially if he's, if he even gets a second running off that half back. We've seen what he has capacity to do there. I just don't see. I just think that's the most likely outcome for him in terms of what his role is going to be. Is he should be a solid cog in that midfield mix, but if it's not, that could change. But I think if that happens, then he's number two for me. And then number 4 through 6, I think Track will be in there. He'll be top 6. Adam Treloar, if he's healthy, I think should be top 6. I actually think Dylan Moore can have a bounce back year, and I reckon Dylan Moore could be top 6. I've cheated, and it could be like Brian Myers. It could be Sean Manor. There's no one else that I'm looking at in the forward line where I go, I'm sure you could, maybe Jordan De Goey if things go right at Collingwood.
Yeah.
But that order of like 4 through 6, I haven't got a set order after Christian Petrarca.
And we don't have confidence in a high ceiling with any of them.
No, not at all.
See, Sam Flanders.
What about you? What order would you do?
Yeah, Sam Flanders, I'd tinker with. If Adam Treloar is fit, I'd have him at number 2. And that's probably just going by previous seasons' highest AFL fantasy scorer a couple of seasons ago.
Yep.
In a Bulldogs midfield that scores pretty well. Flanders, I'm interested to know what he does with less stoppages. If it's a faster flowing game due to the rule changes, what that does to his scoring. Is he going to have the time and space to possess, or is he going to be through those chains, but the ball is gone? It's not going to give him opportunity for his multiple +6s, which he did at halfback through Gold Coast Suns. So, yeah, I have question marks on Flanders. Obviously, the value is undeniable. Whether he's a top 2, I'm not convinced just yet. I don't have the answers just yet. I think you're right about Petrarca. Pretty consistent floor in around the 85 to 90. I think we can bank that with the odd occasion where he might snag a couple of goals and hit that 100 mark. Dylan Moore's the interesting one. What were your thoughts about having him in the top 6, knowing that in previous years you've been frustrated with his roller coaster nature, shall we say? What's changed?
Never again.
What's
Never
changed
again,
for you? What's changed for you with Dylan Moore?
Look, nothing's changed, and I'll be honest. Like this is not one that I've spent a ton of time. I'm just actually bringing Dylan Moore up on DFS in front of me right now. This is not one that I've spent like a ton of time analyzing. I haven't drilled into his stats and broken everything down into the nitty gritty details or anything. It's just this is one of those gut vibe ones where you look at. Like I'm looking at my spreadsheet at the moment of my redraft rankings, and I'm looking at the top like 25 forwards, right? Sheasel, Flanders, Track, Myers. I've got Rankin in there, Pickett, Manners in there. This is not in order. Treloar, Darcy, Moore. And then you got guys like Thilthorpe. I always pronounce it wrong. Riley Thilthorpe, Zach Bailey, Sam Draper, Mateus Philippou, Jack Graham, Jai Simpkin, these guys. I just look at Dylan Moore and I just kind of feel a sense of historical trust there. 2022, he averaged 93. 2023, 88. 2024, 91. Last year, while he was frustrating, he did average 82. I just feel like Hawthorn are at their best when he's kind of, I don't know, being a bit Brian Myers-y and getting some time where he comes in off of half forward and he goes through that midfield and he collects the ball. I think there were times when he was maybe not as accurate last year as he's been in the past. So just all those things, I go, vibe, gut feel, Dylan Moore could probably be top 6 based on historical output.
Yep. Brian Myers is an interesting one. I think the new rule changes actually enhances his ability to find space. I think he's going to get more +6s from defensive 50 through to the attacking arc. Sean Manners an interesting one who had a fantastic second half of the season. He does rely on tackle numbers. So I wonder if a lack of stoppages at the top of 50 through the rule change is going to actually cap his scoring a little bit, in saying that he does have another year under his belt. He is a younger player. So I could see Myers maintaining and potentially with a little bit of upside with the new rules, but Sean Manor is going to be an interesting watch first couple of rounds just to see if those tackle numbers do maintain.
How old do you think Sean Manor is?
I don't know.
You didn't look it up.
He looks 32. Yes. What is he? 32?
Oh, he's 28.
What is he? 20? Okay.
He's 28. He's 28. Like,
okay.
He was a late starter. He's a late bloomer in footy. But yeah, look, I think Sean Mannett, you're right. It really was the back half that he had a really good start, but that he started to get going. Sorry, and his average is propped up by a 144 and a 120. Those two ceiling games as well. I had Manor in draft, and he is a bit of a nervy play sometimes as well. Like he can kind of go long periods without scoring anything, and then all of a sudden he'll score like 15 points in a flurry. And he's not one that I would feel confident starting from day one, I don't think. But he's one that I could see clawing his way in. But you make a really good point about tackle numbers and how these rule changes could impact him as well. Do we see any bolters, any potential massive bolters coming up out of nowhere and making a top 6 appearance?
This is the question, because when we start thinking about starting lineup and value picks, we are looking for these bolters. We're looking for these players who potentially have role change that we can have confidence saying, hey, we could have someone up around this top 6 due to the cap ceiling and floor of some of those in the top 6. For example, your Dylan Moores. I just don't see any. I don't know about you, but I just don't see the bolters that would fight into that top 6. I think there's players with some upside. I said this to you pre-recording, whether we need to reassess what unders is in this forward line. Is 5 points enough? Is 10 points enough? But at the moment, I just don't see any bolters into that top 6, best 22 forward line.
Yeah, no obvious names jump out. Like I still look at names like Sam Draper, and depending on how Brisbane play him, he could be a 95 guy. Like he could be a 95 guy, but I'm not convinced that I see him actually consistently scoring 90 to 95 throughout the season either. So I'm with you. No obvious bolters, but it'll be a really fun season to see how things go. Who are some players? Give me your first player that you feel like you tasked us with listing players with upside. Who are some guys in this forward line that we think could potentially lift and could potentially present some value or some upside? Who's the first name in that list of your players?
The first name probably doesn't have a lot of explanation to it. In the true sense of value, where we look for a player who's a lot cheaper than what they have done previously, and you know their role, you know their capacity. Treloar, if he's fit, he's a lock. That starting price for the quality and pedigree of Treloar, he's in my team at the moment. The only concern is there's no news on him. I haven't heard cooey about Adam Treloar. The only news I have is he watched Dunkley play a lot of footy towards the back end of last season. They were fanboying each other, but I don't.
They have the sweetest friendship, don't they?
Don't they?
They're so cute.
Sweet. But if everything's ticking boxes, in the truest sense of value, he's a starting pick.
Oh yeah, he's in my team as well. Interesting how much our teams have obviously changed since we did our way too early team reveals.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm with you on Treloar. He's on my list of he's on this same list of players with upside as well. You stole all the good ones from me, so right. couldn't come up with 4 new ones.
Well, you take the other one.
I don't see how he's.
You take the other one we both picked.
I will. Riley Thilthorpe.
Yes.
Look, I've got a few things. So I was bringing Riley up last year as a bit of a fantasy bolter, and he brought it home pretty well in the second half of the season. And I was looking at DFS, and he actually had he had like the first 4 rounds, he just smashed it.
Yeah.
He kind of dropped for a few rounds, and then he kind of had another few rounds, and then he had a few low rounds. So I think the issue with Riley is that he's pretty volatile. He had 9 games under 70 points in 2025. These were all games that either were like, because he gets some CBAs. So these were all games that were either like 5% or less CBAs, or he had, for whatever reason, really low disposal counts. In my mind, if Riley Thilthorpe has really low disposal counts, that's because Adelaide is really struggling to get him on the lead in the forward line. He's not taking those marks, or he's being shut down really effectively by a key back. Or they were low goal games, like where he had 1 or no goals. So there were 9 games, all under 70 points, some as low as like 40 points. But he did average 83. And so I look at someone like him and I go, could he kind of be Sam Darcy last year? And would that be like, if you try and time it right with Adelaide's fixture, if there's a window in their fixture where everything's looking really green, could he be a guy that could be kind of interesting to jump on? That's kind of my feelings. I'm not starting him though.
He's an interesting one because he is a one-on-one contested beast. And I think the number of goals he scored in 2025 was a testament to that. And if they're quickening up the game and there's going to be faster entries from your Dawsons, from your Saligos, and there's more one-on-one contests with Thilthorpe, I think he's going to feast on that rule change if Adelaide can adapt. He chops out with the hit-outs as well, and I think, again, that's going to work in Adelaide's favour in attacking 50. And if O'Brien does need a break, because he's an absolute beast. And I was thinking about, well, is kicking 2 to 4 games sustainable? Because ideally, that's what he needs to hit an average of 90 to 100. But he only missed the scoreboard 3 times in 2025. He didn't hit the scoreboard on only 3 occasions. So is it an outlier that type of scoring is not sustainable? Or if we're going to get quicker forward 50 entries and he's one-on-one, I don't think a defender can beat him one-on-one. So that's where I think
he kind of looks like he'd
be some upside.
He kind of looks like he belongs in Game of Thrones, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
Like, he looks like the mount, like Wolverine. Yeah. Well, he's a bit tall for Wolverine, unless you're Hugh Jackman. I guess Hugh Jackman's not too tall for Wolverine. Yeah.
So I don't know. 5 to 10 points. He would be a good Wolverine. Wolverine.
Mm-hmm. Wolverine. It's like Kath and Kim saying Wolverine. Wolverine. 5 to 10 points. He's different. He's unusual. He's interesting. Who's your next one, mate?
Brett Daniels. Now, I don't want to ride off the coattails of MJ at the coaches panel because I've been screaming for Brett Daniels for the past 2 years. He saved my draft side 2 years ago. Because I think he's a Grind Myers 2.0. I think he floats into stoppage unopposed. I think he has that capacity to help out through the midfield. He has midfield craft as well, and I like his injection at the top of 50. He can also snag 1 to 2 goals. Again, quick transition with GWS and their flowing football. If he's fully fit, I think there is upside with Brett Daniels. If you want to watch all the other data, statistics, and know-how, please go watch the 50 Relevant on the coaches panel. But I have had a cheeky eye on Brett Daniels, and all the work that MJ did just consolidated my want to see how he goes. Again, haven't heard a lot about Brett Daniels. I was just stoked that I don't think he's on the injury list, which is good news.
So, look, I want to push back on Brent Daniels a little bit because I'm not sure I see it. Like, yeah, okay, he is potential unders. We saw what he did a couple of years ago, but I'm also really hesitant because, like, from 2024, he had a ceiling game of 171.
Yep.
He had a bunch of other good games too, like 120 and whatever. But if we remove that 171 alone, that drops his average by 4 whole points. So he goes down to being a 79 average player. He averaged 73 the year before that, and he's priced at 75 heading into this year. So unless he can put 10 points on that, I guess I'm just not sure that he offers us much in fantasy in the way of value. Like, if he doesn't go 83 to 86 or something, is he actually doing enough for us from a classic perspective? Because, like, even his CBAs, like when he came in last year and he didn't do super well, I know he's coming off injury, takes a lot of time, but like he was in the midfield a lot. 24%, 22, 10, 35%. And then like his CBA attendances have been kind of patchy. He's had spike games, but generally speaking, it's like 0 to 8%.
I think
I'm not sure I'm seeing it.
With that, he is injury prone, and that's the other flag. I don't think Brett Daniels has been fully fit in 3 seasons. I completely hear what you're saying. They've also added Oliver. Does Josh Kelly give him some space? Losing some players and some younger players to Adelaide and others, does that give him some space? I do see the potential in him. I think it's really down to that fitness and, again, that role.
My next one is Josh Rochelle, because I was reaching. This should be like an episode of Fantasy Fights where one of us is always forced to pick a player that we don't really want to pick. Look, I don't really believe he's going to be a really great pick or anything like that. I don't really see it, but I don't know. In a 3% chance world where he gets a midfield role, he's cost $655K. He's priced at only 62. Look, there's not a ton to see in his stats that really suggest that when he does attend CBAs, he does an outstanding job or anything. But I mean, I don't know. Like, let's just project ourselves into the, let's say 6 weeks in the future. And in every single set of training notes for Adelaide that comes out for the next 6 weeks, Josh Rochelle is training with the mids. Hey, Josh Rochelle is in the best shape of his life. Josh Rochelle's shoulders look really big. Training with the mids. He's at every... like, do you know what I mean? I'm just sort of like, I can see a world where the fantasy community kind of goes, hey, this guy could be interesting. I don't really believe it, but I thought I'd chuck it out there.
And this is the problem. This is what we're talking about with this forward line. I've just rattled off Brett Daniels, right? And you're saying you don't see a lot of upside. No, he's not going to average 95 to 100, but that's the problem, is the upside and the value we're talking about needs to be reassessed. It might just have to be 5 points. We might have to have different strategy in the forward line because our top 6 we forecast to be pretty set, but that's not the way you start your fantasy side. And so we're talking Rochelle, we're talking Treloar, who is of an older generation, who's very injured. This is the problem with the forward line, is we're struggling to come up with solutions to find traditional value. And that's why I think this forward line is so unique this year, is the value, I think, is going to be smaller than what has been in previous years.
Give us your last one.
The last one is going back to my Jordan De Goey. Looked good in footage today, but the no Bobby Hill, Myercheck, and the McStay recent injuries worries me a little in terms of what the midfield and forward line split look like. I'm going to say it. He looked trimmer. I still think he
say the line.
Well, with Jordan De Goey, I don't know, but I think there is 5 to 10 points upside in an aging list, and for a forward line where we can't see a lot of upside, I'm still very keen to see what he does across the next month.
Yeah, look, I wasn't on Jordan DeGoey like you were a couple of weeks ago when we started talking about our way too early teams, but the forward line is just so thin now that I am looking at it because you have to. There are some flags there with the team structure and the team makeup and injuries and things, but definitely one that I'm watching. My last one, and this is a guy that I actually just have. Elijah Hollins. He's not even in team picker. Obviously, he was I think he was delisted officially or something, wasn't he? But
Yeah.
no, okay, no. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Balloons?
So, what balloons? Okay. I want to preface this by saying I don't even know if he's going to be in the AFL fantasy app when it launches. I didn't even know he'd been picked back up by Carlton. But when I was watching the training video and the highlights, there's Elijah Hollins. He's, quote, looking really good. He's looking really fit. He's looking happy. He's got a good boot. Here's the thing about Elijah Hollins. I really rated him highly a couple of years ago before he took. I mean, look, he was a highly touted. He was like a top 10 pick. When I say I mean I think it was last year. Coming into last year, he was initially quite high in my forward rankings for redraft because he looked primed to me to have a potential kind of breakout season for a forward. Like I thought maybe he could go like 85 or 86 or something like that. So let me just give you a few numbers. 2025, his 2025 average from 4 games was 76. That's excluding a red shirt game where he only played like a quarter or a quarter and a half or whatever. So 76. 2024 average of 74.6 but from round 13, he averaged 81.5. I mentioned from round 13 because that's when he started to get a few more CBAs, like kind of this Brian Myers-y type stuff. Like he started to get more CBAs. His disposal counts went up. Like he just found his footing. And so that player that we saw a couple of years ago, he's still got to be there. I'm not sure what's happening with him in general, but he's on the track. He's on the park. I'll be watching him with like this millimeter of my right eye. And also, I just needed to find names for this.
You needed to find names for the content. Yeah, yeah. I don't see
content.
it. They picked up Smith. Newman's back. They picked up Florence, Hayward. Where's he going to fit? Yeah. Kudos
I don't see it either.
Kudos for putting it in.
But, well, just redraft shout out. If he's in the app and he's playing, he'll probably end up on the waiver wire. He'll probably go undrafted in redraft. I would be picking him up off the waiver wire and dropping one of the, absolute nobodies that you picked up in round 14 of your draft, and I just stash him in redraft. But, look, probably not classic relevant. Take us through these rookie names.
Yeah, so Louis says it. These rookies are going to dictate what our forward line structure is going to be. And the problem is we don't have any certainty now with McRae, Dev Rob playing in B team, what that looks like in the next month. But I know in my forward line, they're key. They are key at the moment to what my structure is going to be. Do we have any other rookies or mature age rookies or players coming back of that cheap nature who's going to at least enable us to have a bit of flexibility with our structure? And we'll talk about structure options in a second. But do we have any other options in that forward space?
No. I guess Sid Draper wasn't he? Obviously, it depends what his preseason looks like. Depends how quickly he comes back from the injury that he's got. But I guess early reports from teammates were that he was looking really, really good, that he was electric, that they were really excited to see what he could bring to 2026. So I think the only other name that jumps to mind for me is Sid Draper. He's not a veteran or anything like that. Like, he was a rookie last year. He played very few games, but he was a highly touted rookie. So he's the only other one that I'd have my eye on.
I'm surprised earlier you didn't talk about the Pooh. I thought the Pooh would have been one of your players.
Yeah, he's still on my watch list. I just, and I flagged this when I brought him up, was just that midfield mix is so bloated that it's just hard to see a real clear role for him. Because, okay, so if we've got Nass, we've got Flanders, we've got McRae. those will be the main guys. You could make an argument that McRae was maybe starting to be on the outer by the end of the year. Jack Steele's gone. So maybe there's room for the poo in there. But I'm not sure. He's one that I'm watching. He's got a bit of upside. He's not got enough value or upside for me to put him in a team today. But if we get more information out of St Kilda that looks promising, then absolutely I'll be jumping on it.
Yeah, that concept of value. So in a traditional sense, it's putting in those players that we think are going to outperform their price, make some money, especially in the first part of the season. It's this forward line that we're struggling to find these names. Maybe they will emerge. And I guess I wanted to challenge this concept of value. We talk about getting ahead of the competition. And for this season, the unique nature of this season, what does that value look like? Is it still cash gen? And I'd say 95 to 98% of coaches are going to say yes. The first part of the season is cash gen. But with this crop of forwards, is it actually value having security of scores and maybe having to pay up for your Sheezels, your Flanders, your Track, and then use that value elsewhere in other lines, and maybe bringing down a top-tiered player and putting that value somewhere else? Is the value actually going to be having more flexibility in your forward lines, such as your Draper, your Titler, which we didn't have, again, a lot of training notes on, where we can shift these players around and play with our market and play with our trades that give us opportunity and wait potentially for DPP to come through? So I just wanted, what are your thoughts on that? Challenging that value in a traditional sense by the nature of this forward line this year, and what is it in the forward line this year?
My strategy is to listen to the guy who's won 2 hats and do what he does throughout the year. I'm not joking. Look, this is one of those things where I'm like, I'm the draft guy. I can talk your ear off about rankings, about draft strategy, about trades in draft. This one for me is like, I'm fascinated by this idea of rethinking value. And I think it's a really, really good point that you bring up. And I actually haven't heard many other, I don't know if I've heard anyone else talk about it in the same way that you've been speaking about it. So I think it's a really interesting idea. But I will be following the pioneer, which will be you. And I'm sorry that I don't have more to add to that, but it's just the reality because like, when I think about value in the forward line, I think to last year, right? When, I paid up too much for Jason Horne-Francis, and then we both paid up way too at the top of the value for Matt Kennedy later in the season. And my big learning to come out of that season was essentially don't pay up in the forward line. Now we're in a situation where we're being forced to pay up in the forward line, or we feel like we're being forced to pay up in the forward line for a guy like Harry Sheezel, for example, who is the most expensive forward by a mile. And so that's automatically kind of kicking that learning to the curb. But you make a good point that like, well, the value in Harry Sheezel is not necessarily in his price, and it's not in his price. But rather the value is, well, will he be this much better than any other forward on any given day? And can he essentially be trusted to produce you a midfield premium score? And so that's that value. And you're right, when we look at a guy like Brent Daniels, I said before, if he doesn't give us, he's priced at 75. If he doesn't score 85, is he worth it? Maybe he is. If a lot of the other forward options are only scoring 70, well, then if he only scores 82, that's probably plenty, or that could be plenty. So I think it's a really good idea. I think you're a pioneer, mate, and I would take my hat off to you, but it's clamped on by some headphones right now. And I will absolutely be following your lead with your forward line choices this year, I think.
And that's what I'm grappling with. I talked about earlier, the forward line is so difficult. It's not so much what players do I think are going to increase in price. It's, okay, what structure am I actually going to go with? What strategy am I actually going to go with the forward line this year? And at the moment, I've probably got 3-ish options because we don't want to pick these players that we project are going to make money and they don't make money and they just sit in your team. And then it's going to be very difficult to upgrade the rest of your team because you're so concentrated on what's going on in this forward line. So I guess option one is you bank the shees, you pay the money up, and you go, okay, with that, at least I've got some, again, value in terms of security of scores that I could use that value elsewhere in the back line and potentially in my midfield or even in the ruck space. Leaving then mid prices of, I think we're blessed to have Flanders as a lock for one of those mid prices. And then it's perhaps two more of those, whether that be a Treloar, whether that be a Poo in the sack lunch or a Draper. And then the rookies. We all know that rookies with job security and role have that faster cadence. So that's what I'm grappling with at the moment in terms of structure, number one. But it's the mid prices in terms of, again, confidence in Treloar's body, the Poo's role, Draper, all those players we rattled off. That's the structure I have currently. But the one before that, unless you wanted to add anything to that, is that similar to where you think you're going with your forward line?
You nailed it.
Second
I don't know
one,
where I'm going yet with my forward line. So
second one is I have a Shees, and then I have another top tiered guy, whether that's a Track, whether that's a Mana, whether that's a risk in Degoe, plus the mid price of Flanders and a Poo in the sack lunch or something like that, a Treloar in Flanders. And then again, it's the rookies. So paying up for an extra tier player that I could use the value then in the midfield or the defense space. And the last one is just that pure.
I think currently that's what I've got. Sorry, you asked where mine was before, and I was just checking. Oh, it's not where I'm going. I just thought I'd check Team Picker, and like currently, I've got Shees, Treloar, Degoe, Flanders, Sid Draper, Lockie Doverston, or insert rookie here, Devrob. I don't think I love it though. I've looked at it for a week, and it just feels like there's too much money sitting in my forward line. And I just feel like I could take out Degoe, for example, and I feel like I could reallocate those funds elsewhere for maybe someone a little bit more impactful.
And then my third option is your classic DT. It's pure value. As many players as possible with that upside. So no Shees. We don't have Shees. We have our Flanders probably at F1, Treloar, Poo in the sack lunch, maybe another player or three rookies to back that up. So that's the one that in a traditional sense is what I would go for. But this year I'm questioning that. And that's where I come back to, well, what is value going to be in the forward space for this year?
So when we really, really, really early on, I think it was in our first or second episode of this second season of our podcast, I was like, I'm not picking Sheasel. He's too expensive. That was before we'd really started to understand this forward line dilemma. And so that third pure value one was probably where I pictured myself going. I still might, it'd be interesting to see what happens over preseason, what notes say. I don't hate the idea of like looking at those names. I don't hate the idea of going say, Flanders, Treloar, Mateus Philippou. I can't use that name you've been using. Mateus Philippou. Brent Daniels or insert other here. Maybe a Track even. I'm not sure. I quite like that. I quite like the look of that because, again, I think there's a lot of money that you can then allocate elsewhere. But it will be interesting to see when we start really playing with our structures, when the app opens particularly. I think it's later this week. It'll be interesting to see whether the money that you are actually able to allocate in practice is actually worth the sacrifice of a Sheasel and the points that you could get from him.
Yep. And so much to play out. I mean, we're January, and this is what we do in preseason. But it's certainly the line at the moment with the most question marks, the most concerns in terms of rookies with job security, if that's the route you want to go down. And then it's these value mid prices and whether we make the decision to pay up for a top tier player in Shees or whether we have the need to perhaps pay up for F1 and F2.
Is that it? We done?
Long show, man.
Long show. Hey, that was all right though. I think that it was good. We got some good stuff in there. Are you ready with the little outro button? You got the little music
Let's hit it.
Because we're doing it live. We'll do it live. This one's a bit trickier to. Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah, I like that. If you enjoy the content, give us a follow on the Contest Fantasy Footy Show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. Videos coming soon. Well, as of this one, it's getting loud. I'm Contest Fantasy on Twitter. That's loud. K-Man is K-Man _TC Fantasy. See you later.